We're giving all these kids and filling their brains with nonsense that's not useful to 95% of the population. But why are we wasting their time teaching them a squared plus b squared equals c squared, or y equals mx plus b, or giving them, we went to Boston Latin Academy, fam. We both graduated from Boston Latin Academy. 4 years of Latin for what?
We live?
We live.
We live. Welcome back to the Opinion Factory podcast, the podcast for free thinkers and challenge seekers.
Yes, sir.
I'm Khelil.
I'm Alex. Another day has passed, man, and I still have not used the distance formula. You know,
The distance formula.
Pythagorean Theorem.
You haven't used that yet?
Freaking, Latin. Like Latin, the actual language, like Latin
Hold on.
language.
If you're talking about like the distance formula and the Pythagorean theorem and stuff like that.
Yes. I have yet to use that in my regular day life at all.
What do you do though? Like you're not a math guy. That's to be expected.
I mean, all right. Let me phrase it this way. Right? I've never to use these formulas. Y equals mx plus b. None of these nonsense. Sine, cosine, tangent, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But we all had to take it, which doesn't make sense to me. I'm looking at all this remote learning that all these kids are doing, right? Why are we wasting their time with this shit?
What do you mean?
Like not the remote learning itself. I mean, that has its own problems. But why are we wasting their time teaching them a squared plus b squared equals c squared, or y equals mx plus b, or giving them, we went to Boston Latin Academy, fam. We both graduated from Boston Latin Academy. 4 years of Latin for what? Like for
Latin
what?
is actually,
for what?
all right. First of all, I love Latin, the language, right? And Latin, besides being one of my favorite subjects, it has a lot of uses in the real world.
Like what?
How many times have you seen a word and you like, I don't know what this means, I've never seen it before, but you recognize the Latin roots and then you figure out what it was.
You don't need to take Latin for that, bro. Because that's not even what we learned. That's not even what we learned in Latin. That's number one.
No, it definitely helps. Especially if you go into the medical field. A lot of the human body parts.
So once again, specified fields that everyone's required to take in general high school education. Do you see the problem? Do you see what I'm alluding to right now?
I'm not in the medical field, and it's still coming useful to me.
Because there's some words that you can.
There's some words that I can know what it means without actually looking it up. At least I can glean the connotation, what the author's trying to say.
You can get a sense maybe, and those are very simple words: mono, solo, re. Like you don't need Latin to have those things. So 4 years of
and if
Latin,
you're religious as well, the Pope often talks in Latin.
Not important. 4 years of Latin, learning declensions, learning
conjugations
of what is this? Does nothing for
nominative, genitive, declarative
of a dead language.
Oh, what was it?
Of a dead language, right?
That
does not help you, bro. This is what I'm saying.
All right, so here's
especially right now, remote learning. We're giving all these kids and filling their brains with nonsense that's not useful to 95% of the population.
Maybe not the specific knowledge.
Yes, which is why if you want to give it as an elective, that's cool. Like, when you get to junior, senior level, you can start choosing your own courses. That's an elective, that's fine. Required education is crazy.
Required math should stop before algebra. Once you get variables in there, then it should be a choice.
I think algebra's fine. I think algebra does like some good problem solving and theory.
Pythagorean Theorem's in there, I'm pretty sure.
I think that was more geometry because of a squared plus b. I mean, it might be, but still, nonetheless. But those, not in that sense, not to the level that it goes at. I don't know if people need a full year of algebra. Is what I'm saying.
If you
algebra is useful. Don't get it twisted. But right. I think like when we get to algebra 2 or pre-calculus or calculus, those apply to such a small percentage of the high school population that it should not be required general education.
No, and that's fine. But if you look at what I assume to be the intent of public education, which is to create a population of well-rounded, well-versed, educated citizens that dabble in this and that here and there across the spectrum, you have to understand that to get that, they need to be able to they need to be exposed to these things that you think are useless. Even if they don't use them in their day-to-day life, once they graduate high school, they have a certain amount of exposure so that if they encounter it, they have a basis in which to understand this, and they're not completely blindsided by that in the real world.
Oh yeah, you're right, man. Bro, I was just walking down the street today, and like I couldn't get past the light because I couldn't figure out a squared plus b squared, bro. It just fucked me up.
Not what I'm talking about.
It's not everyday life, bro.
That's not what I'm talking about, bro. I'm talking about, bro. Let's say you call yourself an educated citizen. You went to school, and you want to install new windows into your house. You could pay money to have people come, do all the measurements, do all that stuff, calculate what you need and all that, but you could just do it yourself. If you know how to calculate the geometry and stuff like that.
It's not that simple either. Installation is a whole separate
process. No. But getting the measurements so that you only get the materials and then you may only pay for like the manual labor part.
Most people can figure out the measurements of what they need to install a window.
You would be surprised.
You get a tape measure, you measure the length, the width, the height, and
you'd be surprised.
You're pretty much all set.
How does length, width, and height relate to each other?
Because that's what you need to fill the window. If your window's equal,
you go to HomeDepot.com and they say this window is 16 by 17 by 20. What does that mean?
Bro, it's what we just said. And if you don't know what that means, you can literally Google that. Like honestly, you could literally Google that, man. So this is what I'm talking.
If you want to get no, all right.
So, I'm not saying width times height is useless. That's good information to have, which is fine. But you're saying like, oh, if people were windows, what would we teach them? It's like
a lot of self-actuating people need this knowledge.
I'm not.
Whether it comes to home improvements, whether it comes to doing your taxes, whether it comes to a whole bunch of stuff, you need to be able to, if you find yourself in a situation, right, and you can't hit up Google or hit up a dictionary and you need to be able to respond accurately, these things can come in handy.
I don't know how many situations you come across like that. Which is
interviews.
One. I mean,
interviews.
How many people get interviewed on a regular basis?
I would think everyone got interviewed at some point in their lives.
What type of interview are we talking about here? What interviews? Like job interviews?
Yeah, like job interviews.
You get an interview for the job you're applying for, so you're going to know information already.
Right. But you know that's not the only topic at hand whenever you go to a job interview. A lot of shit could come up.
You're going to ask you a squared plus b squared?
You keep going back to that. No, not necessarily. But they could use a word. They could use a word that you never heard before.
That's okay. Fam, that's okay if you use a word you never heard before, bro. If I'm throwing the dictionary,
what do you mean?
If I'm throwing the dictionary, actually, you can use other, like English class teaches you like, oh, the words around them to give you context, right? So if I throw out a big word, right, and you have no idea what it means, but then you piece all the other words together, you can probably figure out what it means. I don't need Latin to do that. English is required. English is a very simple thing to have. Most people should be able to read and write and come up with an essay, like a formulated argument, because that's also a response to language and how we're talking right now. Like we're both coming up with points, linking them together, all main ideas and evidence and analysis.
No, I'm not. That's not the same skill you need to write essays, though.
Yeah, it is. It literally is.
No.
Oh, you didn't have a gentle.
No.
Oh, man.
Me having this conversation, I'm not using my essay skills right now. And I'm pretty good at essays.
You're using your reasoning skills, which comes from essays, bro. When you write an essay, the whole skill behind it is you have a main idea, right? Your main idea is what you already said. Then you have evidence, and you have analysis, and then you have a link.
You were able to break that down. A lot of people don't care for that. What's the main? I don't care. You know, a lot of people don't do that.
That's besides the point, though. But those skills help translate to real life. Because even if you don't realize you're using those translate to real life. If I'm talking to someone, if I'm having an argument, if I'm having a conversation or a debate, or just talking in general, trying to formulate my ideas, what I'm saying is forcing children to learn Latin, e pluribus unum or whatever, is not a useful tool that should be mandated for people to learn like it was.
Here's my second point. Besides having a basis for something that you may experience in the real world, learning things that you may not use regularly still teaches you a way of thinking.
It's not
even if you've never used the distance formula in your life, you learned a lot by knowing that, by practicing using this formula, plugging in numbers and getting a desired result. That's logic and reasoning skills. And that's all math is.
You learn that in basic algebra, bro. That's what I'm saying. We don't need to go to pre-calculus.
Not to the same level. No.
Yes, you do, bro. Basic algebra
I can promise you, algebra and geometry is not the same as calculus 2. The reasoning skills, the logic skills is not, because once you get to calculus and calculus 2, you have like 7 different tools to solve one problem.
Which is phenomenal.
Rather than algebra, where you only have the distance formula. It's different. It's different.
It's not. I mean, it is.
A lot of areas of your life.
You're taking it to a level of that most people do not need. That's what I'm telling you. There's other classes that teach you quantitative reasoning. There's other classes that teach you logic, bro.
Besides math.
Yes, there's plenty of classes that do that. History. Have you taken a history class before? Have you taken a writing class or an essay?
How does history teach me quantitative reasoning?
History teaches you logic and reasoning and looking at analyzing data from the past to form opinions about the future. That's
not my history class.
Bro,
my history class was what happened in 1812.
That's useless information. That's another.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, that's another thing we can talk about. Again,
but I'm saying that's not quantitative reasoning.
You have to link it to why it matters. So this happened in 1812. The dates necessarily don't even matter that much, but this happened at this time.
Tell that to my teachers, man. I had to fill in blanks with dates.
Okay. Well, yes, which is not really, that doesn't do anything for anybody. Right? That's not the way they teach these classes, which I'll get into right now. Looking at a class like history, the purpose of history is to teach you about the past. So not only do not mistake, those who don't know the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat it. You heard that saying before?
Yeah.
Not only that, but it's also meant to teach you several things about the society and how you can improve it upon in the future and at the society time. So if you look back at, remember things you always say about,
that's not the same as quantitative reasoning.
It's not, bro. I'm telling you, logic and reasoning and applying things to real life. So if we're looking at history, right? If we're looking at history,
that's right. But that's
not
the same thing you're learning in calculus 2. That's not the same type of reasoning. That's my point.
Okay,
that's my point.
Right, so
you learn how to see something before and say, okay, this could happen again. In calculus 2, you have this issue.
You don't need calculus 2. That's what I'm telling you. We can.
You have this issue. You know that you have all these tools that could potentially help you solve this issue. Which one do you use and why? That's important skills to have.
Those are skills that you pick up not only along the way of life, those are skills you pick up in many other areas of life.
But wouldn't you like to learn that in high school so you can be prepared for those situations where you need to do
There's no need for a high school student to learn calculus too, bro. There's just no need.
Okay, just calculus then.
No, this advanced level of math is not necessary for 7% of the population, bro.
You know what? Wasn't calculus an elective anyways? You're probably talking about the wrong thing.
It was. Pre-calc wasn't elective. I mean, this is just for our schools. Schools vary, bro. I'm talking about the general population of the general education of public schools. Most schools don't take Latin. Latin is a dead language. We could be teaching instead of having 5 days a week, instead of having class for 5 days a week, right? 1 or 2 hour time blocks of learning a dead language. We can be teaching taxes, we teaching accounting, personal credit scores, how to buy a house, renting. We can be using. We should be teaching high school kids how to drive. That should be part of the general education, and not something you just go pick up on the side.
Hold on.
That's something that's useful.
Say again what you would rather learn in high school?
Personal accounting, taxes, credit scores. Things. These are things that are much more useful that everyone has to do. You cannot be 18 and not pay taxes. You cannot be 18 and not know I need personal finance. Right? Why am I learning about, like you said, I'm learning about a date from the past with no context, or this happened here. It doesn't do anything for anybody. Right? And the same thing applies to a distance formula. The same thing applies to a dead language, bro. Why are we teaching a dead language? That's crazy to think about. To requare. And
bro, Latin is not as first of all, Latin is not as dead as you think. Latin is the Romance languages. In English, Spanish, French, Latin is very much alive. In theology, in law, in the medical sciences, Latin is very much alive. It's not useless to learn Latin. Let's just get that out of your head right now.
In the general scheme of things, it's very useless to learn Latin. In the general scheme of things, is useless to learn Latin. Bro,
when if you become a lawyer or a doctor, you think Latin was useless to you?
the general scheme of things, it is generally useless to learn Latin. So we have
maybe it
specialized professions, bro.
what society considers higher
man.
level professions.
If I'm a plumber, bro, damn, I wish I knew this Latin thing today.
What if you're not? There's so many people who aren't plumbers.
This is what I'm saying. The general I'm just listing off jobs, athletes, commentators, sport, like even just becoming a regular productive member of society, fam. I do not need to be learning Latin. There's so many people I know that are productive members of society. Bro,
I promise you, for everyone that you could argue does not need to learn Latin, I can show you someone who does or does benefit.
Needs to learn Latin.
Okay, not need, but who would benefit from learning Latin.
Bro, there's so they would benefit from learning Latin, but there's other stuff we could teach them that would benefit them much more.
Dog. Is that what?
I can teach them things that'll be much more useful to their lives than Latin. This is
what
I'm telling you.
I agree with that.
So this is what I'm telling you.
I agree with that.
So instead of me forcing these kids to learn Latin, I could give them that as an elective, right? And this is specifically to Boston Latin Academy, right? Other schools force kids to learn certain languages. Fine, but the same theory applies to all public schools. Forcing them to learn something that is not useful or in a lens that is not useful to the general population as opposed to personal finance, accounting,
so it's not
economics. Yes.
But it is.
I'm not saying Latin's completely useless.
But you're saying there's things that are more useful than Latin that we could have been learning.
Far more useful.
All right, that's
like 98%
we agree on that,
than Latin, bro.
I'm defending the merits because I don't think it was useless. Even though I am in the scientific field, even if I wasn't, I wouldn't say that learning Latin was useless. All right, because if you ever want to learn a new language, if you have the Latin roots, that would be much easier.
How much Latin do you remember too? That's the other thing we're not even factoring, bro. Like, can you
Amo
give me a
amas
sentence in
amat.
Latin right now? What?
Amo amas amat. Amamus amatis amant.
This man's using the clutch. That's not even a sentence, bro. Get out my face, bro. I hate this man, bro.
Did you remember that?
This man's declensions are conjugations, like are more like
that was the declensions. Conjugations is for verbs, declensions is for nouns.
And this is how unnecessary this whole thing is, right?
Declensions are nominative, genitive, dative, ablative.
Talking about dative,
singular and plural.
Bro, look what you said, dative, bro. Like what is this right now?
Yeah. This is what I'm talking about. First conjugation, second conjugation, sometimes third and fourth.
This is what I'm talking about, right? A lot of languages conjugate verbs. That's could be useful.
Spanish,
but every language conjugate like singular.
I don't know about everyone. I don't only know Spanish.
A lot of them do. Whatever. English does as well. But you learn that as you learn the language, and having that.
Yeah, but it would be much easier to learn that language.
Yeah. When I was learning Spanish, saying like, "Oh man, Latin conjugated stuff too," so Spanish is not. There was no real thing to that. So does English.
No, it was. No,
English already does that.
There was.
I am. You are. He or she is. We are. It's the same thing. It's a conjugation of a verb, fam.
Yes, but learning Latin helped me learn Spanish. I can say that personally. That might be just a personal account, whatever, but I'm sure a lot of people can relate.
Just studying Spanish.
All right, I don't want to turn this episode into a defense of the language of Latin, all right?
I mean, that's what it sounds like, bro. I mean, like...
I'm just saying that there are things you learn in school that even though you don't use on a day-to-day basis, does benefit you in ways that you may not realize, whether it's critical thinking, quantitative reasoning, problem solving, or learning new languages.
There's so many things we could do that increase critical thinking. There's so many stuff that already does critical thinking. English, like when you literally analyzing a book.
You don't want to wait
It's a whack way to do it. But when you have to do the theme behind the book, I do think that's whack. A whack way of reading a book and what's the theme, what's the big message behind this.
I don't think that's whack. Why is that whack?
I feel like it needs to be done better. Maybe not whack's the wrong word. It could be done better.
By reading an article?
No, but it's like I don't get it. I just feel like it could be done better. It's like read this book and then tell me what the idea behind the book. I just feel like we can do that better. Now, but there's classes that teach reasoning, there's classes that teach logic, there's classes and at the level we're talking about
calculus, geometry. Yeah.
I don't know why I'm having a calculus conversation. The engineer will not see that most people do not need calculus in their life. Like how we not get this? I can come up with very good reasoning from other classes I've been through in my life that have taught me reason, that have taught me
You use history
logic.
as an example. I'm pitting calculus against history when it comes to quantitative reasoning and problem solving. History does not teach you problem solving as well as calculus does.
A lot of problem solving.
Not as well as calculus does.
History teaches you a ton of problem solving, sir.
Bro, come on.
If I literally
So,
have a
what was your history
stop. If I literally have a case study of comparing light variables, right? Comparing very light variables, I have a case study. This person did this opposite force did this, the mediators did this, and that's repeating in my current situation. I can be like, maybe I won't make that same mistake. Hey, maybe I can redirect the variables to act differently so the same things from history don't happen now. Why do you think so many things people put in Nazism and all these type of things? It's learning from case studies and realizing how you can impact that differently so it does not happen again.
That's not problem solving. That's not the type of problem solving you learn from calculus, dog.
You act like there's only one type of problem solving.
No, I'm not. I'm saying there's different types. And what you're talking about is using prior knowledge, right? It's not the type of problem solving you learn from. You're using prior knowledge to influence a decision that you're going to make. You're not considering the different tools that you could possibly use to make this situation the best outcome possible.
That's what the case study's for.
No,
now you have
that's not what you just described.
I said you have a whole list of variables to look at, and you can decide what is going to use.
Variables is not the same as potential tools that will help you solve the problem. You don't know what formula. You know what I'm saying? You don't know where to go, what to use.
But now
these are all things you learn.
Now you have time out. But now you can see what tools did not work, and you can look at what tools will likely work and hypothesize.
Knowing what doesn't work is important, but it doesn't always help you solve the problem.
You know what else was really good for that solving problem stuff? Scientific formula. The things we learned in chemistry. You know, the hypothesis and all. You know,
chemistry is also very important. How often do you use chemistry?
Use chemistry every day. Chemistry is an everyday thing when you cook or like whatever, that type of stuff. You know.
Really? You think about the atomic bonds?
Not in that.
The noble gases. Yeah, you tell me you use what you learn in chemistry every day, bro, to cook.
Not in that sense, but cooking is literally chemistry.
Yeah, sure. Salt is NaCl.
No,
thanks,
bro,
chemistry.
Cooking is really chemistry,
bro.
When you're trying to,
I know cooking is chemistry, but you don't use the same things you learned in chemistry class to cook.
No, and that goes back to how. All right, so I want this episode to be about, and this will be a part one. We'll call it things high school should be used for, and things they were not used for properly. Right now, when you go back to reteaching classes, I agree with you. We do not need like 5 days of chemistry teaching us about every periodic element on the table. But that's not that useful, right?
I've yet to find it used for noble gases.
But when you go to labs and see how things react with each other, I feel like that's useful. When you learn not to mix water and oil, that's useful. When you learn
high school labs are cool. College labs are nightmares.
Yes, but when you learn things like that, when you learn labs and simple things like solutions and like what gets off rust, what makes rust happen, and I know not to leave my bike chain out in the rain and shit like that's useful, every day.
Right.
Or not everyday life, but basic life, like things will happen that will come across. So this is what I'm saying. Now we can get back to the point of if chemistry was should be 5 days a week or like that. That's a little different. So just stay with me real quick.
All right.
My whole point is I'm here. I'm like, I've never used y equals mx plus b. I don't even know what y equals mx plus b stands for. Like intercept slope or something like that.
Yeah, that's to calculate the slope.
This is what I'm saying. Like physics is another one. I think physics was cool. Physics is a good class to have that's required. But like what are the examples they're giving us to learn physics? Oh, this train was racing across at 6:15 at 50 miles per hour. The other train on the other side was coming in the opposite direction at 80 miles per hour at 6:22. At what time will they run past each other? It's like what is that, bro?
But I know
it's useless.
But to be fair, right, it's useless examples. But like you said physics is useful, so I'm not going to argue with that. It's useful,
but it's like
police officers use that kind of logic. If they know that there's a red light here and a red light here, and the speed limit is 30 miles an hour, so there's no way you should make the green at the second, right? If you make it, they know you're speeding. That's physics. Distance,
and
speed.
that's useful.
Distance, time, and speed. There you go.
Like physics is very useful for people driving cars and all that type of stuff. But what's our personal devices that make it, speedometers and GPS and ETAs and
But how
traffic
reliant
locations.
do you want to be on devices? That's one of the things that I think is very important in being a general, Renaissance.
You sound like one of those old teachers. Like, oh man, you're not gonna always have a calculator in your pocket. That's what you sound like, bro.
I might.
It's the new world, bro.
You're gonna have people with like, what's 13 plus 21 again?
I don't think so. All right.
You don't think so?
You're exaggerating. Exaggerating. But I want the priority to be things that are going to be useful, not in everyday life necessarily, but going to be useful in things that come up in everyday life.
So high school should be less about academics and more about life.
It should be about academics. Academics is a very
less about
part.
Academics, but more about life.
There needs to be a better mixture of both than it is right now. Because learning line is not as useful to me as to learn personal taxes. It's not. It's like imagine how much better a situation the country would be in if everyone was taught economics, right? If everyone was taught economics in, let's say, 7th, 8th, or high school, it's probably a better age to teach it. Everyone's taught economics so they can learn things like, hey, trickle-down economics has not ever worked. So maybe we don't.
What does GDP stand for? How does that affect me?
So maybe we don't pass tax cuts to like very rich people that never come back down to us with higher wages. Like if that never happens, so maybe I can learn that in my life and when I apply to political life, political pressure, voting, just everyday life. Like, okay, I learned that, like, or just like economics in the sense of like how money's generated and is there a better
inflation?
System? Yeah, inflation,
recessions. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So imagine how much better we would all be if we learned things like that, if we learned things like finance.
Like, for example, when I had my new job, there was a very nice Russian lady who sat next to me, and she asked me what my salary was, and I told her like what I was offered, and she's like, yeah, they don't pay very well here, but don't leave, because in 3 to 5 years we're going to be in a recession the way things are going, and you're going to want to be somewhere where you have a history and they'll be less likely to let you go. I didn't ask how she knew that, but she sounded like she knew her economics. You know what I mean? Useful stuff.
But at the same time, because she just lied to you, so you took that job.
That's not why I took the job.
I'm saying, like, because she just lied to you, because she took that.
No, but I'm talking in the event that she was right. She knew something that I didn't at the time because she knew economics. I took an economics class in college, and I slept through it. I didn't really care that much.
Yeah, it
was a gen ed. It was a gen ed for me.
We'll get back to college. Gen ed. We talked about a little bit, the whole different story. But I'm talking about high school education, where everyone has to go to until at least 16. We should be teaching things that prepare people not only for life but also the academic field. So, quick thing before you go. Like, is reading about weathering heights in the lenses that we've learned them like very useful either? Like, the lenses we learn things, like I said, I was gonna be a little separate, but I'm doing that in right now. Like, the lenses we learn things in are kind of trash. Like the examples of the train, the examples of the example you gave of the history teacher, like what happened in 1812. Like, that doesn't teach anybody anything except memory.
Exactly.
So
that was my problem with history class up until senior year, where I had a very good history teacher. Shout out to Miss Cook.
Miss Nolan's that legend, man.
And Mr. Nolan.
Miss Nolan's good. Where those things kind of become trivial. Like, what happened on this? Like, he would kind of do that. Which, I don't know if you remember Mr. Nolan's class. He would do like that thing on USA Today or
class. At the beginning of every class, he has something from today that pertained to a history fact that we may or may not have studied. And
that was trivia. And I was like, oh, those are like fun facts,
Yeah, that
but
was
then
cool.
he was able to intertwine to why this matters, why that mattered then, and why that matters now.
And that's part of what made me like history class, because up until then, it was just like I said, the War of 1812 was fought where? Like, come on.
So if we're just rethinking how public education should work, I just think there should be a way to.
So here's the thing: your question about the Wuthering Heights, learning Wuthering Heights in the lens that we did. First of all, I didn't like that book.
Trash book.
I still don't know what it was about, but thinking back on it now, remember Miss Shaw's class and all that, it did teach me or force me to open my eyes to analyze things in ways that I wouldn't have otherwise, and give me an appreciation for things that I wouldn't have otherwise appreciated, especially art when it comes to things like books. So when you ask for how this character develops, in what ways did this character change from chapter 1 to chapter 2, what were the themes in this paragraph and stuff like that, like it definitely helps me appreciate art a little bit more in all aspects of life.
I get that, but I just feel like learning about, books that aren't necessarily relatable to us and learning about it in like, oh, how this character changed from this to this. Like,
but think about like how important the classics are to us. You don't think the people higher up have important classics to them? Like, think about all the kids running around today. Like, who's Michael Jackson? In a music class, you don't want to play some Michael Jackson. Would you only do things that are contemporary to those kids, or would you want them to be aware of the classics?
I feel like music is very different because like each generation that goes on appreciates old music though. Like
I don't know about that.
Our generation like will bump 70s, 80s. The generation before that will bump Beatles.
I don't know.
Beatles is still playing right now, bro.
Yeah, but there's a lot more bands in the 60s and 70s and 80s than the Beatles.
No, there are. I mean, well, you have to be like really, is that like a really outstanding song to last.
Right, and maybe Wuthering Heights was the shit back in the day.
I get that. But,
and what if I'm not a big fan of the Beatles, but when I go to music class, that's what they made me study because they're the classics.
But there's also other classics too, though. It's not just one.
But the thing is, they're classics. They're not relatable to us. They're old.
But they can be relatable to us, though. Like,
and Wuthering Heights probably had like language and theme and grammar and everything interwoven and progression of characters and story arcs in a way that other books don't have, and we just couldn't see that because we're stupid in high school. I mean, we never encountered anything like Wuthering Heights before.
I mean, maybe, but that book was trash.
It's like when you see a boxer like do his little quick punches, or a guy with a sword doing his tricks. It's like, yeah, it looks cool. You don't really know because you never really experienced or
it's just
firsthand anything like that before, so you can experience how good that is.
I just don't think reading about books like Jane Eyre or Wuthering Heights is anything for anybody. I feel like you can do that with.
It does something for me.
I feel like, but you could do that the same appreciation for art that you had analyzing things in a different lens. You could have learned that from a recent book or just a more relatable book that's not old.
What if it didn't have the themes that the teacher wanted done as well?
But you could have found another book that had those themes.
I mean, all the books that the teacher knew, Wuthering Heights portrayed this the best way.
The teacher's not the one that chooses the thing, though. There's like a whole board. There's like a whole
the board
department.
Yeah,
there's other books. There's other books, bro.
And there's some books in there that I really like Game of Thrones. I learned because of high school. Cool. Part of my summer reading was reading the first book of Game of Thrones.
And then
the next summer the show came out.
I'm actually like upset that I didn't remember this point. I'm happy you brought that up. Game of Thrones. How you like that? Now, if you force a kid like me, or just like 95% of high school kids, to read a book like Wuthering Heights, to read a book like Jane Eyre, to read Shakespeare and worry about I Am Pentameter, like, why would I want to read again, bro? Like, it just turns me off to reading so much.
It does. I used to love reading before high school.
Exactly. You used to love reading before high school. And elementary school, after lunch, we'd have like 15 minutes of silent reading before we got back to classes.
And that was lit, because you could pick your book.
Dumb, bro. What? Remember how lit Scholastic book fair used to be? You had like $5.
Oh, bro, stop.
Bro, that's why I found like Bone comic books and Goosebumps and
Richard Terabithia. Yeah, we had some hitters.
Right? First of all, great book. Like, I'm looking at the books I read in elementary school, the books I was supposed to read in elementary school and 6th grade, middle school. It was like Richard Terabithia was one. There was that other, The Giver was another one. Like, good. You remember The Giver? No? The one about the utopia?
Wait, say the title again?
The Giver. The Giver. They made a movie about it too. It was about this like utopia. And like they did things very specifically. Everyone had the same. It was almost like a perfect society, like run through, like everyone has the same amount of everything. But then this kid finds out about like some of the stuff they do to keep it that way, and he's like, nah, this is fucking wrong. Mm-hmm. Like if a twin was born, one of them gets like thrown away. If I'm correct. Yeah.
That's not funny.
Because only the kid was born, one of them if a twin was born, one of them gets thrown away because everyone only gets one kid. So
Not China.
Yeah, I guess you could say it like that. But that was like those were like fun and really interesting books that made you think about things and really made you challenge life. If I learned about Pythagorean or Shakespeare and like some trash ass lines, now like you just turn people off from learning. Bro. Like, learning is good.
Yeah.
Learning is fun, and these dudes took away the joy of learning by forcing these trash ass things upon us that not only weren't fun, but they turn out to not be useful as an adult.
You know what?
Now it's like, now I have a really big problem with this public education system in the U.S. where it's like I'm learning trash things and they're not fun and they're not useful.
Maybe school prepared us for life effectively in ways that we didn't realize. Like, I don't know if you remember that teacher I spoke about I had in college, an English teacher, professor, his name is Christopher, I forgot his last name. Cool guy. Had a bad leg that semester, I think his leg is better. But every class, he taught, but every class was like philosophy and life lessons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like useful stuff. And one of the things he said was that high school and college as well prepared you for life by sucking the joy and creativity out of the things that you typically enjoy. And when you look at how in high school you come to class on time, you sit at a desk all day, you have dim indoor lighting all the time, you have someone telling you what to do everywhere you go, that's what you're going to do when you graduate. And so that's preparing you for that. You're not going to do what you enjoy if you want to make a living in America, typically.
That's facts.
Right?
Facts.
And so maybe it does prepare us, but just not in the way that we want to be prepared.
Useful,
because if high school was lit, if high school was dumb fun, then you get to the real, was like, bro, I got to sit in this office all day? You serious? That'll be much more of a shock, wouldn't it?
I mean, yeah, it would be. But, I mean, that's also terrible. It's also says something about the work world in this country and all that stuff.
I mean, it does. But in that, if you look at it that way, then high school is really preparing us, it's making us dodge a bullet or a lot of disappointment.
To be happy with like trash lives, to be happy with like, giving up like half of your free time per week to a
but
job.
If it's what you don't realize what you've been deprived of. It's like when you see like children in like third world countries, they have nothing, but they're still playing, they're still happy, and they're still laughing. Yeah. It's because they don't know the joys and comforts that we know, so they don't feel like they're deprived of anything. And that's what's happening with us here.
Yeah, it's 100% true, but I mean that's ugly though. Like, how is that a good thing to have though? That's just ugly. Bro. Like it's weird too at the same time because you have like elementary school, which does the same things. Like you go to class on time, you have homework, but it's much more fun.
Yeah, you get nap time in elementary school.
You have recess. You have
maybe that was kindergarten.
You have recess. You have nap time. You have silent reading, books of your choice. Like there's just more. I feel like there's more freedom around things that you do in elementary school.
Right, and then after that, they just slowly kill your inner child.
Yeah, exactly.
Until you're happy with an office. As long as you get your own office, not a cubicle, then you're good.
Like at my elementary school, music was required, arts and crafts was required. Like you had things to keep you creative.
Right.
And things that you could also find, like art, creative.
And those things were mandated. Those were not electives. Mandated. There you go.
And then when did art stop at like art school or other schools? What's the first thing to receive budget cuts when schools are out of money?
Yeah,
music, like so. It's I don't know, man. Like it's funny. Like you have elementary school, but then you have that weird. You have high school, where it's just become like our lives right now. But then you have college, which is very like, this is your last fun time.
We're gonna get to college. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like colleges, you have all this free time. You take only 4 or 5 classes that take up like 20 hours a week, maybe.
You don't have that much free time in college because when you're not in class, you're doing homework or projects.
Depending on your major.
Oh, I don't know about you then.
You're an engineer, bro. I'm not. I was a good calm guy. Communication is lit. Just write a lot of papers and you're chilling.
That's why what?
Just write a lot of papers and you're chilling. Write papers, movie scripts. Do some portfolios for visual stuff. Like design. But after you do that, you just having fun. You know? And then you just go back to 9 to 5, and you're like, my life sometimes it's like that SpongeBob. It's like that SpongeBob video. You ever seen it?
Which one?
Way ahead of its time, man. We never realized as kids. It's like that guy is staring out the window. He's like, and his wife's like, "You coming to bed, honey?" And then, so the days changes. The guy has like a blank expression on. He wakes up. It's sunlight. He's staring out his window. He's in his
office, in his car.
He's in his car driving to work, and he's in his office, same blank face. At night, you coming to bed, honey? Rinse and repeat. And that's what life is kind of like. And
that's what you're being groomed for.
High school, I feel like high school doesn't even prepare. That's the only way high school prepares you for life. All the skills that you need to learn, you have to learn on your own. How to do taxes, like
pretty much how to buy a house.
How much of my taxes come on my paycheck? Like, bro. Side note, very weird. And other countries don't do this, by the way. They tell you your post-tax amounts you make. Say you have a job, you make 40,000, but you only take home like 31. Why don't you say you make 31,000?
I don't know, because whenever you apply for loans or like apartments or like houses and stuff, they still use that 40. They use the gross.
Yeah, I don't
know why.
That's stupid.
Because it's like a good 10-15% of that you don't ever see.
Exactly. So it's really like that's just a side note. It really it's a backwards here, man. Nonetheless, all I'm gonna ask is, how useful have you found your high school education to be? Should you be learning live?
If you learn live, and if you took higher level math courses, even if you're not in a mathematical field right now, do you feel like it benefited you? Because I feel like it did. I just want to know if I'm alone in that.
Hey.
Let us know what you guys think. Comment down below. If you like the video, make sure you share with your family, with your friends. We would love to hear your opinions about this. I think a lot of us went to high school. I want to say a lot of us have had the same experience. Let us know if you think we're bugging. Yeah, so
Opinion Factor like the video. Find us on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. Like the video.
Might be audio.
Share with your friends.
Thank you guys for tuning in.
We'll see y'all
next week.